All right, so we've talked about solving with square roots, talked about solving with completing the square, and then we have another way to solve it, and it's called the quadratic formula. Kind of a long formula, but it's effective. I'll talk about when I think it's better to do quadratic formula and when I think it's better to do completing the square as we go. Probably not today, maybe tomorrow, but we'll see. So x equals negative b plus or minus square root b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. So remember, like our standard form of a quadratic function is ax squared plus bx plus c. So all the a's, b's, and c's in there are referencing those numbers in the problem. Okay, so the first set of problems, it's just going to ask you to write the equation in standard form. So I want to put it in that order. And then identify the value of a, b, and c that you would use to solve the quadratic formula. So you're not going to actually do the whole problem. You're going to just identify this would be the a, this would be the b, this would be the c, but it's not in the right order and so forth from the beginning. So you might have something like this. So standard form would be equal 0. So I'd want to move everything to one side. So, I want it to be, where x squared, x, and a number. So for this one, a would be 1, b would be 5, and c is negative 10. Okay, fairly simple, hopefully. Okay, so one like this, it really doesn't matter which side you go to, but I always kind of like the squared part to be positive. So if it's already positive, then I would move the 7x and the 3 over to the right side. But since it's negative, then I want it to be positive, so I would add it over here. It usually just works out nicer in the problem. It's not like a requirement. And so sometimes you might have one or two that you might need to combine. Excuse me. So the a would be 2, the b is 7, and the c is negative 9. Okay, so your first 6 problems, that's all you're doing. Get it in standard form. And if one of the pieces isn't there, so let's say you had like that. Well, then a is 5, b is 3, and c is 0, because there's not like a c part. It's not the 0 at the equal 0. There's no c part after the 3x. So if there wasn't a 3x there and it was just a 3, then the b would be 0 and the c would be, so if there's a part missing, you're just going to put 0 for that part. Okay? All right. Then, so importance, obviously, but to have that memorized. If you get that memorized, a lot of people actually prefer quadratic formula to do the problems all the time, and then never do completing the square because they don't like it as much, which is fine. It works. But as we move forward, I'm going to show you that sometimes quadratic formula is 100% the right answer, like the best choice to do the problem. It'll be easiest. But sometimes completing the square is better. So, and I'll talk about the difference as we move forward. Okay? All right. Have a great day, guys. We'll see you tomorrow. The last 6 that you're going to do, you'll have to solve. Okay, so let's look at so negative b plus or minus b squared minus 4ac over 2a. Technically it's x equal, but so we're finding where does the graph cross the x-axis, so it's going to be x equals something and something. So this one, so our a is up top, like right here. The a is 2, the b is -5, and the c is 3. So just be careful when you plug it into the formula, excuse me, that there's a negative right here with the formula and there's a negative with the b. Okay, but in our case it's not, it's a -5. I don't know why I wrote the b. Okay, so negative from the number and negative from the formula. Most common mistake there is just -5 instead of both negatives. Excuse me. So b squared -5 squared, I'm like making all kinds of little errors, minus 4, a is 2, c is 3. All over 2, and the a is 2. So you can see most of the work happens underneath the square root part. In the front, we have negative, negative, positive 5. Then we have -5 squared is 25. 4 times 2 is 8. 8 times 3 is 24. 2 times 2, 4. So we get 5 plus or minus 25 minus 24 is 1. And the square root of 1 is 1. So I need to do, like, there's 2 problems here. 5 plus 1 over 4 and 5 minus 1 over 4. So this is 6 over 4, or we would want to reduce that to 3 over 2. 5 minus 1 is 4, divided by 4 is 1. Okay, so just like we talked about it before, if you have x squared, squared means 2 answers. It is possible to have 1 answer. It is possible to have no solution. So let's see. All right, so yeah, you're going to have a no solution and you're going to have a 1 solution. So let's look at both of those. All right. Okay, so if we had this one, the a is 1. If there's no number in the front of the x squared, it's just a 1. So negative b, so negative 6, plus or minus square root of 6 squared minus 4. A is 1. C is 9. 2, and then A is 1. So negative 6 plus or minus 6 squared is 36 minus 4 times 1 times 9. 4 times 1 is 4. 4 times 9 is 36. (36 minus 36 is 0. So square root of 0 is 0. And 0 is not positive or negative, so you just plus 0. So there's only one answer. If you did negative 6 minus 0, it's still negative 6. Okay, so when the square root is 0, that's going to give you one answer. Okay? So you will have, I think, 2 of them where you only get one answer. All right? Like we got this one, the answer was 3 over 2 and 1. Okay, so you could have a fraction like 3 over 2, or whole numbers like 1. But you'll be able to, like right here, I was able to do the square root of 1. On all your problems today, you're going to be able to do the square root of that number, or it's going to be, when you get to this point where I circled it in blue, you'll either be able to do the square root, like it'll be 4 or 9 or 16 or 25, or like a number that you can do the square root, and then you need to do the 2 problems like I did at the bottom. It could be square root of 0, which is 0, so you're able to do the square root of that one. Or it'll be a negative number, and then the answer is no real solution. Okay, tomorrow we'll talk about what happens if it's square root of 10, and it's not, like it doesn't have a square root. Okay? All right, so then what would it look like if it's no solution? Okay, so again, our A is 1, B is 2, C is 10. So negative B would be negative 2 plus or minus 2 squared minus 4 times 1 for the A and 10 for the C, all over 2A. So negative 2 plus or minus 2 squared is 4. 4 times 1 is 4. 4 times 10 is 40. Okay, so 4 minus 40 is negative 36. Okay, so there's 2 things to talk about in this one. Number 1, and the most important part, square root of a negative number, you can't do it. 36 is like, oh, square root of 36 is 6. So you might think, oh, it's negative 6. Like, no, it does not matter what the number is. If it's a negative underneath the square root, you can't do that. You can, but it's an algebra 2 concept, not an algebra 1 concept. So for us, when you get to this point and you have a negative number in the square root, okay, the answer is no real solutions. So there is such thing as imaginary numbers, and that's what we'd have to do with the negative 36. But like I said, that's algebra 2. So that's why it's not no solution. It's just there's no real numbers that are solutions. Okay? So negative number under the square root, we put no real solutions. Okay, so all your problems will either today will work out to be whole numbers, a negative like this one, and you can't do it, so it's no real numbers. You're not going to get a square root of 10 where it's a decimal or you got to reduce the square root and all this stuff. Okay, so